these students are just coming back in such a huge amount. Is the job market going to be ready for them?
Well, actually, the job market is pretty tight, not only for the returnees, but also for domestic students.
Absolutely.
So it could be challenging for them to find an ideal job, especially their expectations are very high.
Because their parents paid a lot of money in order to get the overseas education, haven't they?
Yeah, even for the cost recovery purpose, they might want to find a job with a decent salary, but that could be very difficult given the number of the persons seeking jobs in the labor market and also those returnees plus the domestic graduates.
That's right. Yan has been talking about the job market, but what about the qualities of these returnees? When we say returnees, meaning Chinese students studying abroad and not coming back to have a job. Some say they're of two very different extreme groups. One is those are really talented, high academic scores, really precede everybody in terms of academic achievements. They go to some of the best universities in the United States, or in other countries. That's one group. The other group, well, probably they wouldn't even get to a very decent university here in China, so their parents pay a huge amount to get them educations overseas. And there are those educational institutions elsewhere that would accommodate them. So, David, what do you make of these two groups and their qualifications and their opportunities back at home?
Well, the job market is tightening up, that's true, but China is transitioning its economy to try to move away from a manufacturing base to a more innovation, high-tech and service industry base. So those students who have specialized in those fields should do all right when they come back. And a lot of those people used to be, when I first came to China, if someone went overseas, Chinese,
that was,
they would never.
Centuries ago.
It was the Qing Dynasty.
No, 20 years ago.
But if they could make it overseas, they would never come back. I think now a lot of them have the skills, and they also have good English, which is still a marketable skill here. And they think, why not go back? My parents are there, and they'll go back to maybe the second or third tier cities. So I can see why they would go back. Not all of them are going to be winners, but some of them will do quite well here, I think.
What about that phenomenon? I mean, yeah, that returnees are not going to be something anymore. It's just one of those. And what would that mean for them and their families? They expect much when they go there to study, and their families, their parents saved their whole life in order to support them. Now they're just one of them.
Well, one obvious reason is the gap between the higher education quality between those developed countries and China is closing up. And the qualities and the skills that these students try to seek in overseas universities now are accessible and available in the domestic universities. And on top of that, the domestic graduates also have their comparative advantage. For example, familiar with the local culture and the social connections. For example, if they got opportunity of internship in one institution, they might be more likely to stay on to get a job there. So that's a kind of like advantage that overseas graduates won't have.
That's true. And for those overseas graduates, they seem to have a very different feeling about China also while they are studying abroad. I was approached by several students before our interview and tried to do some pre-interview with them. Some of them were suggesting, before in China, they would follow every American soap opera. But now, when they're in the United States, even studying in some of the best institutions, they tend to follow even the entertainment news here from China. It seems that they don't want to be disconnected with China. They think their final destination is still back at home. So what about that? Is that going to make them very competitive in their studies abroad? Or can their attention span be able to focus on so many different factors while they're studying abroad?
I think that a lot of students, in the old days, would have liked to come back, actually, because they were outside of their own culture. If they could make a good living in China, they would.
Or they have a good academic environment.
Or have a good academic environment. They could come back. In terms of we're talking about some of the people who are the highest level technical expertise coming back. To tell the truth, if I were a big brain like that that had been schooled in the United States, I would look at China in a different way now. I would say, in areas such as genomics, in artificial intelligence, China is now leading the way.
One of those.
And I might think, maybe it's a good idea to actually go back to China. If I had a choice between Google and Baidu, Baidu also looks pretty good. So I think that would, if you're looking for a high-powered career, Beijing or China, some of the big first-tier cities is not so bad. If you're not at such a high level, the job market is still going to be better at the second or third-tier cities like Qingdao and Tianjin and different Dalian, whatever, which have very nice standards of living.
While being away for several years, whether it's for university, even graduate school, and probably some even had the high school education overseas, there is a disconnect. No matter how much you focus on the information coming from China's mainland every day on the internet, but there's still a disconnect of what is going on here and what they heard and what they understand. So when they come back, is there also going to be a cultural shock? Can that cultural shock last long? And will that be, in a way, challenge those returnees in their competitions against or together with the so-called locally educated?
Well, there is definitely cultural shock, but the degree varies from the person to person, also varies from groups to groups. In particular, if the students went abroad at a younger age, when they come back, they might have larger or more cultural shock. And also, if they have the more stereotype of the local Chinese culture, when they went abroad, China is changing so quickly. Every day there is a big change. So if they assume that everything stays the same, then we come back, definitely there will be a shock. They will be shocked.
They will be shocked. And some even say, are they going to be competitive against those international students who are coming to China after their graduation, try to seek a job over here? David, you have brought many of those to China.
That's true, but the ratio is not very good. We have something like 300,000 Chinese students studying abroad. I don't think we even have 30,000 Americans studying abroad here, or even maybe all the foreigners. So there's still a very big disparity there. The students that might come here are looking for what we would call a China career, and it's a very different kind of thing. They don't tend to be here for a long time. They want to use that as a CV builder, some way to build a better career when they go back. The Haigui that we're talking about, the returning Chinese students, they're coming back because, as you say, they feel disconnected. They want to come back to this culture, and they feel like, now I can go back because China is wealthy, powerful, and I can make money here, and I can live a nice life, high lifestyle here.
Is there a difference? I mean, you were educated in the United States in university in Washington, the state of Washington, by the way. Is there a different mentality, let's just say, compared to current generation to your generation? There seems to be more of personal goals and egos, and in your generation, some were suggesting there seems to be that big dream of making China stronger. I don't know whether there's a generational divide like that. Is there? Yan?
Well, actually,
a big smile on our face. What does that mean?
It's
I'm
hard
always
to
wondering.
say. This is a very good question. I noticed the difference, this sort of
You did
generation gap
notice.
between myself and my younger colleagues. And I asked them, and also just from their performance and the daily behavior, I was thinking, are we really the same in terms of this kind of aspiration, especially patriotic aspiration? But one thing we're sure is everybody witnessed the huge change that taking place, and also the rapid growth that's occurring in China, and we are proud of what has been achieved in China, and we're happy with growing together with this country. I think this feeling probably has been shared with all the people,
I see.
regardless of which generation they are in.
Final point from you, David, just very briefly. While China, of course, having many of the returnees back home, the United States, for example, some of the other countries are having very different visa policies these days. They want to say America first, or their own jobs for people for their own jobs for their own people. What do you make of this difference?
With the visa situation?
Not necessarily visa situation, but rather attractiveness of a country, of a job market.
I think the United States is going down in popularity for many, many reasons. The economy is cooling down. It still has the top flight universities, but China, the attractiveness of China is definitely on the rise, and that's going to affect not only the Chinese that come back, but other countries that might think of having a career here. So yeah, I think China is on the way up.